All right. We are recording and it is May 23rd. I was going to say 25th, but it's May 23rd, 2018. Here with the Artist Voice crew. And today we're doing Q&A. So we've been chatting for a while, just kind of catching up, shooting the breeze. But now we're going to get down to business and see what we have in the Q&A bag. So let me pull that up. And let me get my documento in front of me. All right. So, first question for me. I don't think all these questions are only for me. I think there's plenty of room for other people to pipe up and share information, but this one was aimed at me. Question for Karen. How do you position a response to the question, I don't need a photographer, I have an iPhone? Nicely, that is. Is this from one of you in this group?
That was from me, actually.
Okay, so when you say I don't need a photographer, for what?
Anything.
Well, because sometimes an iPhone's enough, especially if they lack the skills.
If they know what they're doing with it.
How do I position a response to the question or the statement, I don't need a photographer, I have an iPhone? So first of all, more often than not, I just say, well, that's great, and walk away. But it depends. It really depends on the situation. So, in a situation where like that's their answer and that's that, I'm like, well, then have at it, Scooter. And there's really no discussion. But if there is a discussion, it's sort of like when I do voiceovers. A lot of times people think, oh, I don't want to hire a voiceover. You guys are expensive. I'll just record this myself. And I'm like, knock yourself out, honey, because you'll be calling me in a week. And they do because they really aren't happy with the results because they're not trained to do it and they don't know how to do it properly. So you have to ascertain what page you're on, in my opinion. In your case, because you're starting your business, and this probably came out of the fact, Sue, that you're talking to a lot of people and building your business and having conversations and figuring out if they need a photographer and for what and so on and so forth. So is this a scenario where you might actually have conversation continue from this point?
Possibly, yeah.
So
I like the way you said that earlier, though. Like that, and that makes so much sense. Like if somebody's at a point where they really believe that they can get the quality that they need.
Yeah.
What I'm learning since I put that question in there, what I've learned is that the market is way bigger than I ever anticipated it was going to be. Mm-hmm. So if somebody says, no, that's okay, I have an iPhone, then it just saves me the time of trying to convince them otherwise. I'll just go with the next one.
Yeah, you can do that. Or if you feel like there's a there, and that's why I say it really depends on the situation. So let's pick two theirs. And one is, great, have at it. Here's my card, just in case that doesn't work out for you.
Yeah.
The other scenario is they believe that, but there's a willingness to have a conversation. And what I think a lot of people's fatal flaw sometimes is to start off with the attitude that you're going to, number one, change their mind, and that number two, you know better than them. Because either one of those will send people running the other way. Yeah. So you have to be genuinely curious if you're going to continue the conversation in that scenario and say, really? Well, so what do you do with it? I'm genuinely curious. And don't try to steer it toward, well, I could do that so much better. You might even give them a couple of tips, that's a great way to start with it. And that works for you. And you're getting the results you like, and ask them questions, draw them out, get them talking, because you might be able to help them. And that's always a good way to win over people, or it doesn't always win. You can't think like, I'm going to win you over, damn it. It's like, somebody, I'm going to date you, I'm going to marry you, you're going to love me. It's just creepy and weird. But if you're genuinely interested, you might ask them questions about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And maybe you have some suggestions on how they can do it better. That'll make them love you forever.
Yeah, and then when they have a big job, then I'm probably the one that they're gonna.
Yeah, because they know now that you're not pushy. You're not going to try to, change their mind or tell them what they should do, and which, of course, when you tell someone what they should do when they haven't asked for that, it's not a permission-based tell. Then it's insulting.
Yeah.
Now you're just assuming they're idiots. So I always find that to be really effective. And then make sure you leave your card and say maybe we'll work together one day.
Could I also interject?
Yes, ma'am, sir, man.
Okay. Yeah. What you said was great. And to be able to ask questions and start a little bit of a conversation, get a little bit of a rapport. But then before you leave, suggest that, let me leave my card, in case at some point you get to the place where that iPhone won't do what you need it to do. Let me leave my card and then you can call me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. You do sales, don't you?
Yes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So that's what I meant by, and here's my card for, in case you need more than, same. Right. Exactly. But you're clearer. Yeah. That's the thing is sometimes women, I don't know about you, Sue, but I know you're Canadian, so you're probably raised a lot like me, which is you don't want to be too pushy.
Absolutely.
So you say, here's my card in case you need help, where what Mike said spells it out more. Yeah. And I do find that you really do have to tell people what you mean, even if you're not trying to be pushy. You're not trying to tell them you're going to screw this up at some point with your damn, iPhone. So here, I'll fix it for you. You don't want to go down that road. But what he said is, it's perfect for where you're at now. And for the day that it isn't, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And I think having that little conversation, just speaking like a customer's point of view, is it builds trust. Because you take the time to talk, and even just without any sales, you sort of walk away thinking, I feel good about that person. I kind of really trust them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you don't build some kind of a little bit of a rapport, or even like Karen said, some tips, then you give them the card, it's going in the trash can. But if you build a rapport, then you've got a better chance of them keeping it.
Right. And you can, I don't know, Mike, what do you think about this? I think depending on the person, I think it's a fashion risk a little bit, but you can always say no later. But you can say, and if down the line, you need a little more help, or you can't quite figure out how to, get your phone to do it, or get the right shot, let me know. Maybe I can just give you a little help over the phone.
Oh, absolutely.
And if they abuse that and call you every day and start really pumping you, then you can say, I love that you feel comfortable to call me, and I love helping you, but really at this point, this is what I do for a living. And so, to continue like this, you really are going to have to hire me. And just say it in the nicest possible way.
Yeah.
Mostly people don't do that, but if they do.
The odd one may, but I don't think it'll be a problem.
Well, Sue, for me, the other thing I would say in a more negative way maybe is to say, like, every day now that I'm out pounding the pavement, I hear no, right? And I just have to think of it as, great, one more no is a step towards one yes. Right. And I've learned to not take it personally.
Yeah.
Because I did that for a long time, and that's really not helpful for anything.
No, that's one thing I have learned, is that I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Everybody has their own needs and their own perspective.
Right.
And they're going to come to it, especially when I'm approaching them with a possible solution to what they may not even realize is a problem for them. Right? Yeah. So.
And they may not realize it for a little ways down the line, until one day it dawns on them that they have a problem, and they know just the right person to solve it for them.
Yeah.
Yep. I've had that happen in voiceover in particular.
Oh yeah, I would believe that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Feel pretty resolved on that
everyone.
one?
Thank you, everyone.
Good input. Really, really good.
Awesome.
So the next question is for everybody. Anybody working on personal projects? And if so, what was your process?
I have way too many to even list them all.
Well, then what's your process then?
Oh, well, I've never actually started any of them.
So the process is to have a lot, just don't start them.
I actually do have one that I'm getting pretty serious about, but I haven't dug enough into it to really say that I've got a process.
Do you feel comfortable talking about it?
Yeah, sure.
Tell us what it is.
Well, I love to drive, and as I drive around looking for new things to photograph, I've started noticing that there are a lot of small rural churches that are very, very old and are still in amazing condition that I know are probably not going to last another 25 years because the millennials just think it's okay to tear everything old down and build new things.
Mm-hmm.
And churches is one of those things, especially because of the dwindling interest in younger people in organized religion. Not only that, but small churches, small old rural schoolhouses are being bought up by people and being turned into homes and getting gutted and basically destroyed. And finally, churches are not something that most people take a lot of photographs of. So my pet project is to try and find unique, well, and here's the other thing too, is that every church is different. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as a church blueprint that gets used more than once, right? And so my project is to try and locate people that can get me inside those little churches so that I can photograph them, and for posterity or for whatever, artistic reasons, historical, whatever. But I also have a friend who is an archaeologist and who takes photographs. He calls it photogrammetry. He takes multiple, like when I say multiple, hundreds of photographs of an archaeological dig or piece of architecture, either inside or outside. And then he has a process where he blends them all together to create a 3D image.
Wow.
I'd like to do that with the interior of some of these small churches, so that in 50 years you could walk in and see what that church looked like.
Wow. That is freaking cool.
Yeah. Still just thinking about how I'm going to do this. I haven't actually ever approached anybody, but I found one on Friday that I absolutely have to photograph because I don't think it's going to survive more than another 2 or 3 years. And it has the most incredible stained glass windows. It was originally built in 1854, and it's wood, and there's like wood siding. It's not even a brick building, and the birds are starting to break in and start nesting in behind the siding. And architecturally, it's really, really simple, but it's not being used anymore. It hasn't been for years. And it's, I have to be inside there just to get the light coming through those windows because they're so beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to make that happen.
Oh, I hope I can.
That's really cool. What's somebody else working on?
So that was me who asked the question.
Yeah.
Because what I'm trying to figure out with all the other stuff that's going on, whether I can find time for it. But one of the things that I've had for years on the back burner, my grandma was super important to me when I grew up. And she was like this larger than life legend to me. And some of her stories got lost after she died. And so I want to find a way to photograph family legends and tell their story so that those stories can remain alive somehow. And so I'm not sure how to go about that other than I have a title of Legends and Legacies in honor of her. So I don't know. I'm toying with it.
So, you know, when my mother was in assisted living she wasn't there very long, like last 4 months of her life, but we really bonded with, it was a great, great facility, and the people were so awesome. And they found out I was a photographer, and they were talking about that. And I'm trying to remember what they said, but apparently families of people in assisted living and whatnot love that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
And they like it. Well, what they were telling me, and I'm sure it's different, and I'm trying to remember now. I think there are actually some people and companies that do that sort of thing, but I think it could probably be done much better. But like for patients, like maybe with Alzheimer's or dementia, as a way to sort of help connect them to their life and their loved ones and their
cool
parts of their lives. And apparently there was a bit of a market that could be developed there with assisted living, especially the assisted livings that like maybe have the, you start
like a memory care unit.
Yeah.
And like a step approach. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Because that's what this place was. And,
okay.
and they did have a dementia, what do they call it? Unit, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that might be a place to just start to inquire and ask and see what and then maybe you can Google search, figure out what the search is for that, but start throwing some of those words out.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Because they were very positive about that whole idea, and I was kind of interested, but it wasn't really like, that's not really where I kind of I gravitate towards, but I could sure as heck see the value in it. And if you're a good storyteller, it would be incredible.
Yeah. Seems like a good way to honor her. So
that could be started as a personal project, and once you develop once you develop relationships, it might even be able to be turned into the other part of your business.
Could be. Yeah, I guess so. I hadn't thought about that, but it's very true.
Pets and legends. I don't know. Somehow the pets of legends.
Yeah.
Pet legends.
Right.
Something like that. There's something there for sure.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
That was very cool.
What about others?
I've got a couple of projects on the go.
Yeah?
And so I'm waiting for my studio to get fixed. I haven't actually started, but I'm concepting it all out. And the first one is I did a self-portrait a while ago called Wilted Rose. And the idea behind it was, once I was young, but I'm now but a wilted rose. So I've now extended that, and I'm going to try and photograph women, possibly men, but it's more of a woman thing, 50 years and above. But what I'm trying to do is get their photographs when they were in their prime, either an early, very early wedding photograph and or portrait in their 20s. And then I wanted to have them, so then when I'm doing the portraits, I'll have like a frame, and I'll either juxtapose that image into it or composite it into it later, and or if it's of good enough quality, I may take it in the imagery as well. But again, in my style, where it's always a little bit quirky, I suppose, I want them to be in, like, not just a portrait. I want them to be doing in memory, in, maybe caressing the images, but I also want some of their backstory to put into, and I'm hoping I can turn it into kind of a book of wilted roses with some story, so some words about them. So it becomes, because people have got such incredible stories, they're amazing. But then somehow from that story get into the moment and have that imagery and the wilted rose and the youth. So there's this, because I'm always astounded at how beautiful some women were. Like, you look at them very aged in their 80s, and then you look at these photographs and you go, oh my God, they were so, not that they aren't now, but they were so gorgeous. So I want to kind of bring that all in to a time frame.
Yes.
So that's one that I'm working on and in the process of starting. And the other one is my friend and I, she's a wonderful seamstress. I'm a gluer. I glue all the costumes, but she is a seam, and we're working on these kind of 16th, 17th century kind of costumes for. I'm going to bring my grandkids into this because they're cheap models, and but with a twist of modernism in their costumes. So there's going to be this real juxtaposition of modern aged. And I had the most gaudy curtains in this house. Like, they're so bad, they're great. We're actually turning those into those little 16th century little gowns. And then I found some pillow slips and the most amazing fabric. I'm turning that into a little vest. And I'm not sure, I'm going to do lots of candles, and I'm not too sure what the story of that is, but I've got this concept in my head.
Wow. Two things went through my mind, and I'm not trying to, do anything to your idea because I think it's so fabulous. But the two things that popped into my mind were, and you did it to some degree. I don't remember the name of the image, but there was one that you did, and I remember it being kind of pink and softer because I remember you saying, "Well, I'm trying a little soft or something." But that's random. But anyway, the idea is, one, there's a bas relief in Florence, the doors, that going blank. What's the name of the damn doors, that are done in bronze? Anyway, they depict, like, they're a fixed area, so they're doors, but they depict the story of the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
Each frame is like, and there's a lot in each one. You could look it up, Gazzoli, something like that. The baptistry doors. You could Google that. And then, so I don't know the Bible well enough to know exactly what stories, but the entire thing is on a door in bas relief. And so that was one thing that popped into my mind because of that image that you did, where you have maybe not that whole person's whole life, but where elements from their life are kind of go in and out throughout the image in these interesting ways that only you can do, because I've seen you do it, which is why it popped into my mind. And secondly, if you've never looked at Maggie Taylor's book, I have a book I bought at one of her exhibitions, which I've never seen online anywhere, but where you could buy it. But Maggie Taylor, so what she did, she's one of the innovators of like Photoshop and stuff like that. One of the, like in the 90s, was like one of the first people to be doing all this stuff. And she'd photograph old photos and make these really unlikely figures in these unlikely spaces with, might be a fish flying through the air, or this or that. Also quirky, a lot like what you do, but stunning, just really stunning. It's not like you. I'm not saying it's like you, but those are two things. I don't know what you'll see there for you, but I would be curious for you to investigate both of them. And what Maggie Taylor did was she would order, I don't know if she ordered prints from eBay or, the equivalent of ordering like a set of prints or slides from eBay, and then making, using sections that are like not copyrighted or anything like. They're just random, boxes of images, and just using them somehow. But see, you have your subjects, and then maybe you could find things from their life. And I'm not trying to take over your creativity, but those were the images that popped into my mind when you were talking. Just thought I would share.
In the Clade series, I did that. I got them to bring personal items, and we could try and resonate in some of those things. And I actually had that in mind for this portrait one, as well as bringing, I may even go into the environment. I'm just not too sure how I'll handle it all yet. Some studio, some environment. But I'd like to incorporate strategic pieces. And I've kind of got this, as much as we have the frame, but like always little bits and pieces that they mean something, like they're in the image, but they actually mean something. So, yeah.
Wow. Man, I want to see those. They're done.
I'll just get my studio fixed first so I can go in there and create and work and set things up.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so cool. So freaking cool. Yep. Anybody else? I'm like a minor bird. Whatever I hear, I repeat. So be careful what you say. Okay, then the next question is, and my personal project is just really pretty much my life right now. I don't know how to say it any more clearly than that.
I think we already heard about your personal projects.
Right? I know.
They're wonderful.
Yeah. So my personal project is, for once, actually living the life that I dreamt of when I was a kid. So that's my personal project. So the question is, what, who, or where inspires you and why? Ooh. Who asked that?
Me.
So was that directed to me or to everyone, or
everybody? I'm just inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like it. Anybody want to pipe up?
Can you read the question again, please?
Yes, it's one of those what, who, where. So what, who, or where inspires you and why?
I think I might need more wine for that.
I was so tired before I started this. I was going to have wine. In fact, I bought just a little small bottle for myself. Not that I'm going to drink the whole thing tonight, but just because I didn't want a whole bottle. And I was so tired I drank coffee instead, because I figured if I drank wine, I'd be asleep by now. Okay, you know what? I'm going to jump in, because people ask me this, like expecting me to name a photographer and a somebody. And I'm always loath to say that no one in photography inspires me. And I think that's really bizarre and telling. There are certain kinds of composite work or really kind of out there art that uses photography that inspires me, but I usually don't know who does it. I just think, oh, that is so cool. I just love how that makes me feel. There are certain films I find inspiring. Film moves me more than photography does, unless I'm doing it. Unless it's done a certain way. I think there's just so much bad photography that I don't find very inspiring, and there's some really good films. But for me personally, okay, this is going to sound all religious and stuff, but God inspires me. And I don't mean religious God, because I don't go to church and I never have, but I have talked to God my whole life and gotten very direct responses. Have been getting a lot of that lately. And when that happens, and when my life aligns in such a way that just pours through me, and like that becomes the way I live, that inspires me. That's about the only thing that really, really inspires me. I love certain people's work, and I do love certain films, but it's only that level of divinity that actually inspires me. I probably would never say that in public, but that is the truth.
But I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's sometimes that you're in a place, and if you don't put the camera down and see what God has made and done, you're a fool.
And you know what? When I see that spirit move in a person, and I see that transformation, that inspires me. That thrills me. So it's the same thing. I agree with you. I'm agreeing with you and adding, let's not forget that thing that happens to someone who touches their own divinity. Pretty much nothing like it. I just love that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Mike. Yeah.
Inspiration can come from so many different sources for me. I have to agree with you in that there have been very few photographers that have truly inspired me. I've respected and honored many photographers. I treasure what I can learn from them. Mm-hmm. Primarily you, Karen. I've learned so much from you. And I really do appreciate you. when it comes to inspiration, though, I find it's the things that I see that are surprising or new. So, or seeing them in a different way, seeing them from a different angle. For example, if I'm driving along and I see a flash of brilliance, whether that's the sun setting behind a tree or deer off in a field somewhere, or as a car goes past, I see a reflection in the window and I think, oh, wow, I wish I could have caught that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough to get my mind thinking, well, how can I recreate that moment? How can I capture that in my mind's camera so that I can either use that another time to tell a story or to look at something differently, look for that in what I would have maybe only ever seen as the mundane and the ordinary before.
Just like that moment when you go, oh, I never thought of that. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, what would happen if?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was out hiking on Monday. We had a holiday here in Canada on Monday. And I went for a hike because it was a beautiful day and not too sunny, which was blessed. And I had my macro lens on, and I was seeing all of these tiny, tiny little woodland flowers that once I got my macro lens up close to them became totally different little pieces of living material. And it was amazing and wonderful. And because it's spring here, everything is new and fresh, and leaves are starting to pop out and create interesting shapes and textures and colors that you don't really see any other time of the year.
Yeah.
And all of those things combined, and I was thinking, wow, why can't it be spring all the time?
But it wouldn't be spring, it would just be flat. What time of year is it? Oh, it's flat.
It's flat. But it was really cool because it got me thinking, okay, so how do I want to shoot this dandelion? I mean, how many people shoot dandelions? It's a weed, right? But once you get up close, they become little planets of really cool little crowds of people with their arms up like this, and having like parties on the top of the flower, and it's the little swirls and all kinds of little things going on, and it's those kinds of things that inspire me. I think is just looking at something in a different way. I don't know. That's kind of okay.
That's really cool. I just had an idea for a really fun group exercise, which is because, well, what popped into my mind was, talking about the little people, and I'm like, there you go. There's your storytelling. It's so great, little people. And then I thought, ooh, take that with the little people and give it to Marjorie and let her do her post-processing thing and make a thing. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. That's a really fun exercise, actually, to take an image. It could just be one that one of us takes, and then everybody do something with it, whatever, and then we share it on our next get together.
That would be fun.
That would be super cool.
Yeah.
So you just have to decide on an image. Do you want it to be one of mine? Do you want it to be one of you guys's? Does it matter to you? Because we could do it repeatedly. It doesn't have to be the only time.
We could do it like a Secret Santa.
How would that work? I mean, I know what Secret Santa is, but I mean, how do you mean?
Well, so we each draw names from a hat, and we give each other one of our images, and then you don't know whose image you got, and you have to do something with it, and then we all have to try and guess who got our image.
Okay, let's do that one second. Let's do the first one where everybody does the same one.
Okay.
And then do the Secret Santa thing. Or, that way we get two. I like that. I like that a lot. Pardon me. And no holds barred. You can do anything.
I think you should use one of yours, Karen, because then that way only because I can't think of anything to put in there.
What did you say?
I said we should use one of yours because I can't think of anything to offer.
Okay, I'll just throw in.
Or whomever for someone else.
God, it'd be interesting to like do a landscape version, and then do a city version, and then do a portrait version.
Yeah. Would be.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Actually, because everybody be so different in how we see things.
Yeah.
Ooh. I should be writing this down. I come up with these ideas and then I go, what was I thinking earlier?
We're recording it.
Well, and that is super inspiring.
Like I'm going to listen to it. One image everyone processes, and then different genres, and then that's another idea, and then Secret Santa. Okay, that should.
Well, the other thing I like is to do the chain approach, like you do in writing. Where you do like part of a sentence and then somebody fills it in, and then you keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
So like Sue, you'd process it and then you'd send it to somebody, and then they'd have to like take that and add their own thing to it, and then
That would be fun.
It gets a little. That is interesting. It can get a little like too much, too many different paint in the same.
Yeah.
So
some have to be mud.
Yeah, it might just end up being all brown, but.
Well, yeah.
Or like limit it to like 3 people, or I don't know, just throwing an idea out there.
Or you only have 5 minutes to work on it or something like that.
Or, there's a rule in improv, like you do this in improv where you tell, like improvisational people get really good at telling these stories off the top of their head. So, but when you go to class, you do all these different exercises that help develop that. So one of them is it's called yes and, because that's one of the basic rules of improv. So someone says, one day the eagle landed, and you say, the eagle landed, and then, this happened. So you build it, but the rule is you're not trying to trick the next person. You're not trying to box them into an impossible position. You want the story to keep going as long as it possibly can. So you leave room. You make your statement, but it's meant to hand off to someone. You're not trying to make it like so awful that it's funny to watch someone try to do something with it.
Yeah.
You actually are trying to make it make sense. So we could make that rule for it. Okay, we may or may not get through all of these. We could do another one of these and do the rest and add to it. So that is so good. That's so good, the inspire thing. So the next one is describe your dream photo trip other than Francypants trips.
Tanzania.
Yeah, really?
Africa has been so high on my list ever since I was old enough to know what
ours
Africa
would be the most fun. I can promise you that. They'll have the best food. Okay. So who asked that? Was that you, Lisa, as well?
Yeah.
You were asking everybody, right?
Yeah.
I love your questions. They're always so good, so thoughtful. So what's a dream? So I think Mike does them every 2 months.
I almost think maybe it's a dream trip where because I've been thinking maybe back to like an Airbnb or something like that in Villefranche and stay there for 3 weeks and just do.
Yep.
No plans, no nothing, just do. Go and do.
That's pretty close to one of mine. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. So you can really sink into the place and let it kind of take you places. Yeah. I keep thinking.
Or in the middle of Tuscany,
At that point, who cares? Either one is good.
Wine and food. Does it get any better?
Right?
Yes.
Villefranche, though. Villefranche would be so good. You're close, actually, not too far from Italy at Villefranche. How long did it take us to get there? Half an hour?
Not much longer than that. I don't think it was. That sounds
Wasn't that
No,
long.
I think it was 45 minutes, actually. So that means you're maybe, I know it's a 45-minute drive to Italy, to, why am I going blank? Going blank on names today. Uh,
Ventimiglia or something like that.
Ventimiglia.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've
I think
never been.
on the train, because the train goes to Ventimiglia, that same train continues on to Ventimiglia. I think that might be its last stop. And then you can switch trains and go further. But yeah, you could keep going and go into, or rent a car and go into the Alps, because the Alps is like a half an hour drive, if that.
Or Lisa, rent a car and go find a winery and have a picnic.
Sounds
Oh, we did that,
brilliant.
didn't we?
And you know the Luberon, that region of Provence is not far from there. It's we drove through it on the big road trip I did in 2016. We drove through that area and go to Gorge. Is that how you say it? Anyway, a lot of these, like where the villages are on the hilltops and stuff, and then down as it goes down, there's the vineyards and the wineries and all that through Provence, and that's where all that great wine is. And that's not a very far drive either. And you can stay in some of these little villages. You can always find a B&B somewhere that has room. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Unless, maybe if you're in there in June, it might be harder, but go the right time of the year. Go in September.
Or October, say.
Yeah. Well, it can rain. It can start raining in October. We've been really lucky that hasn't happened, but beginning of October is safer. But yeah, dream photo trips are, I think, a dream. Okay, so I think this would be a dream. So, and this could be all of us. Who knows? Maybe one day. But so Lika, you all met Lika, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So she has a group of friends that there's about 20 of them. And so every year, around the holidays maybe, so this last time they went and rented a villa in Italy, just this group. And they stayed for like 4 or 5 days and whooped it up and drank wine and had meals and had laughs and did, all the stuff they love to do. And they went on excursions. None of them are photographers. They just went on excursions. They went to a castle. They went to not just a wine tasting, but a something making. I don't know if it was olive oil or what it was, but I mean, they had all these crazy adventures, and they all drove. And then the last day it snowed, and none of them have snow cars. So they were like, throwing their luggage in the car and jumping and running to get out of there before too much snow happened, because they were at some elevation where that can happen. But she describes these things, and they have done this for 25 years, I think. Every year, because they come from all over. Some of them are not in the country. Most of them are, not too far away. But some live in, I think 1 or 2 might live in the States, and others live in other countries. And they just come and they do this. It's like their thing.
Very cool.
That could potentially be a dream trip with the right people, where nobody's leading it. You just go and do it. You just have fun and I'll break off into groups. I mean, do like group of 2 here, I want to do this, whatever. And then you all come together for a big meal at your place, and you got your one place.
Love it.
That would be neat.
Yeah.
Here where I live, everybody's got a chainsaw going. They've all just started, so I'm going to have to go inside to my echoey house. I'm sorry,
You don't even hear it.
Can't you? They've all just started. All right.
I don't even hear it. I hear the birds. But I don't hear the chainsaws.
They just started.
That's right. And you can also mute yourself.
Oh,
Or I can mute you, but you know when you want to talk. So just mute yourself except when you want to talk. And then enjoy your garden and your snakes. Oh, I love it. Okay. Did we cover the photo trip? Okay, what's our time? Maybe we do. Marjorie, you are the question queen, and they're all so good. Really good questions. So I'm thinking, because I find when this video goes longer than an hour, it just gets so huge and it bogs all my computers down. And it takes a while to create a version I can actually upload. So your first question is, I would love if Karen could share a few tips on how to better speak for video blogs and not get all tongue-tied in the head. The rest of the question is, also it seems videos get a far bigger social media audience and something to be more worked towards if one is wanting to connect with more of an audience, and I would agree with you. So going back to the first part of your question, so you start trying to talk and then you sort of forget what you're saying and get all tongue-tied, and okay, so you'll have to figure out the best way for you, but I'll give you a couple of ideas. I always plan what I'm going to say. And I also plan about how long I want it to take, because there's nothing worse than not only getting tongue-tied, saying the wrong thing and whatever, but then it takes 3 times as long. And then you got this really long video with you being tongue-tied and it sucks. So there's a couple ways to approach that. One is to write your stuff down. And you're talking about doing it all in one take, right? Not having to do video editing? Okay. One is, don't be afraid of silence. Most people feel like they have to talk the whole time. And honestly, especially if you're showing something or teaching something or sharing something new, it really helps people just, especially if it's new, they're going to hear something and their brain's going to want to go, oh, wasn't that interesting? I never thought of that. Huh, that would apply. And then you're like 3 chapters down the line because you never stop talking. So don't be afraid to talk a little slower. Let there be a little silence. Let things have a moment to kind of sink in, which gives you then the chance to organize your thoughts, talk a little slower so that you don't have to go and get all tongue-tied because your brain is trying to push you faster and faster and faster and faster. You know that feeling? Like you got to get it all out. So that's one thing. The other is, do you get tongue-tied because you forget what you were going to say? Okay.
And also, like, your old heads talking, the two splitting, this one saying, oh God, you sound ridiculous, or oh, you said too many ums, you've got 2 brains.
Right. Right. Okay. So then you have to set a structure. So you give that part of your mind a focus, because if it doesn't have something to focus on, it's going to do that. And I know because it does that to me too. So if you want to memorize it, one way to do it is a mind map, whereby you pick, first of all, decide how long you want it to be. And you'll start to get a feel for how many ideas fit in 3 minutes, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 tip. Unless they're super short and you can go, I'm going to show you 3 tips in 1 minute. It's going to change your life. Here we go. Number 1, blah, 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 blah. Right? So giving yourself that construct, that shape, you can't go longer than, and maybe you do your thing in 1 minute tips, 3 minute tips, a 5-minute tutorial that's really short, a 15-minute tutorial of something that's more complex, but it's all divided down into these specific areas, and you're only talking to those points, and you're talking way less than you think you need to. And then how to construct it in your mind is a mind map. So you go, I'm going to start here, I'm going to end here. Now, what's the road? We're going to go here. This idea naturally goes to this one. All right, now we've gotten here. This idea leads to this one. So we go there. And then we got to get here, but it's going to take 2 moves. We've got to go through 2 towns to do it. So now we're only going here. So you have it, one idea leads to another naturally, which is also going to help someone learn if there's that's how we used to memorize scripts in acting, is you had to do it word for word, and they were kind of long. You would develop a mind map whereby the first thing you say naturally leads the mind to the next conclusion, which just happens to be this, right? And so that every time you get to the point, there's always a point in the script that you always start to forget where you're going next. And if this mind map is sort of overlaid in your head, then you always have your directions. It's like having a map in your hand when you're driving, so that you don't do too many squirrel stops. Does that make sense?
Yes, good, thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives
Like
your
a
mind.
mind map, that makes a bit of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then what you can do too is, if, you know, for some people that's not quite enough and they still lose track. So simply have, like, you know, a card or a piece of paper there with your notes, with not too many notes. So you got to stop and read and figure out what you were trying to say, but your bullet points. And, you know, sometimes people actually draw it as a map, because that helps them. They're real visual that way. Some people do it in an outline form. Some people just use a word, because that triggers their whole thing. Some people do it as a phrase. So, you know, you have some options to figure out what the best way is for you. But make the assertion that you're going to talk at a speed that allows you to never say because if you're saying what has happened is that your mind got ahead of your mouth. Does that make sense? Well, well, that's not quite the right way to say it. Your mind went way too far ahead. And they have to be in sync. The mind has to be a little bit ahead, but not too much.
So yeah, something I'm really conscious of, and I do it, and I'll go, oh, you're a bleep 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 idiot, and I start all over again. Yeah,
that's using your mind for evil and not good. So, okay, so in acting, when you're acting on camera, what you would have a lot of people do, and this is going to relate, believe it or not. So what you'd have people doing is they memorize a script, and then they're saying things from the script, and you can see them in their eyes. If you're watching their eyes, you can see them almost reading the script off the page in their eyes, and they get a little monotone, and it really just goes, What in real conversation, you get the idea first, and you see it in the eyes. So it's like this, right? And you go, I'm going to tell you something really cool. You know what it is? I'm going to tell you, right? And you can't stop watching and listening. The great thing about that, just putting the idea, so the idea is just leading it's too engaging. If you get too much separation, that's when the yapping can start. If you have your mind map and you know where you're going, there's only room for that. And if you have too much time, if you find yourself drifting, it's like, okay, then you got to tighten up your construct. Because if you're up to something and you got to do this whole thing in 3 minutes, you don't got time to think about how you did it or didn't do it. And it takes some practice, because there's kind of a rhythm to it, and you find out what your flow is and the best way to make it all stick. But it's like sticking pins up so that the yarn you tie to each pin doesn't flap in the breeze. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. I'll work on that.
Yeah, and if you have any trouble or kind of come up with gaps in that or have a question, just hit me, because that's not only what I do, but it's what I taught for years too. So.
I hate hearing the sound of my voice when it plays back. I'm going, oh my God, I hate the way I sound.
Everybody does. Everybody does. And part of the reason is you're just not used to it. Part of the reason is that, especially if you get tumbling, it's hard to listen to, because the thoughts are fragmented and it doesn't land. And that's always hard to listen to, especially if you're the one doing it. And thirdly, when you're doing that, usually your actual voice will go to a place that tightens. And electronics will thin and flatten not only the sound of your voice, but it'll flatten your expression as well. So now all you're hearing is this la, 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 thing that's just like, oh, will you shut up? Not that I have ever done that. So really learning how to craft how you share ideas and how you present, and how unafraid you are of little pauses, and how you bring people along, and how you tell a story, because isn't that really all we do all day long when it comes to what we do, what we in particular do, is you tell a story. So even if whatever you're sharing on your video blog, I don't know what it is, don't rattle on and on and on. Have a point, get to it, get done, get out of there.
Oh, thank you.
You be welcome. We could do a whole hangout on that if you guys ever want to.
Yeah, I'd love to.
That would be great.
Yeah. As we're building businesses, I think that's an important thing to know.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing a lot more videos.
Yeah, me too.
So I can use all the tips that I can get.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it will have to do with the way you sit. I mean, there's a whole thing about what to wear, how to sit, where to put your face, where to put your eyes, how to use your voice, how to do your pacing, how to remember, and it all becomes second nature because it's all connected. But if you don't know them, you lose a lot of impact that you could so easily have. So,
that would be really cool.
Handy that I coached TV and news broadcasters for 25 years, eh? So that's cool. And in fact, I've been thinking, because I coached voice for so long, and I had an online coaching program, voice coaching program in 2007. Nobody did that then. That was the hardest thing to put together, and now it's a cake. And now I've kind of moved on, but now I'm sort of coming back to thinking, talk about voice. I have this thing. Why don't I just do that? It's just that you got to launch it and you got to go through this whole thing. I'm just especially right now, I'm not quite prepared to do.
I bet there's a huge market for it.
Oh, there is. I'm actually, strangely enough, I do get voice coaching clients coming up who have seen me somewhere. And I just finished a 3-part series with a gal up in Canada that saw me speak, I don't know, it was 2015 up in Kelowna, Canada. And she needed help with her voice, wondered if I did it privately. And I'm like, not that often, but I'll do it for you because you're cool. So we did. And I'm like, God, this stuff's good when I don't have to do it all the time. But, it's like so doable. Unlike trying to work with photographers. Oh my God.
Which is a little bit like herding cats, right?
Herding cats, deaf cats. Oh my God. I can say that in this group. It's a singularly daunting mission that I'm not so sure that I'm actually equipped to carry out. Anyway, that's part of my project to decide where I'm going with all that. I can see really fun ways of doing what I want to do around all that. Just a much tougher audience than I ever dreamed.
Well, I was just thinking that if you could take somebody to France and give them a real French experience, it wouldn't be quite so hard.
Why didn't I think of that? What's wrong with me? I feel so stupid now. Yeah, if I could just clone all you guys, I would do this forever. Anyways, I'm just thinking of some of the things people have said to me, and I'm just like, life just isn't long enough for this.
Make us laugh. More.
I should share some of it, but then it's dissing people, and that's not right. People are going to do what they're going to do.
It's true.
So true.
Very true.
What I find really interesting is that, not that I do them all the time, but that the Kelbys are interested in what I'm talking about. And they asked me to do the first one. So they asked me to do this one too, and are willing to fly a crew out to actually do it on location. So I'm like, are you really prepared to do what I'm going to do? And they are, because we talked it through the other day, and I'm like, well, that ought to be interesting.
And when will that be published?
Huh?
When will that be published for the viewers to see?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'm only going by a feeling. I think maybe it might be fall. We're shooting it the 3rd week of June, and I know, and then they're actually going to, I think if they're doing 2 photographers or 3. I know they got 1 stop after me, and I thought there was a 3rd one maybe they were doing before me or something. So I'm not really sure. Depends on their production schedule and how they have them staggered. But I was going to ask when they're out here.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I think, let's see, I think we're going to wrap on that, and I'm not going to throw your questions away, Marjorie. I think we should do this again. This is fun, kind of talking through some of these things, and it helps to do the Q&A, not because I'm the one with all the answers, but because it gives us a focus. And then when one person says what they're thinking, then that makes somebody else think about something, and it's, you guys are all really good at all this stuff, so your ideas are really helpful for everybody, for me too. I learn a lot. So maybe we'll let's see, what is a month from now? A month from now I'll be doing the Kelby thing. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with this whole moving thing now that we lost that house. I don't know where I'll be, what I'll be doing. So maybe in 3 weeks, or maybe in 5 weeks or 6. I'm not sure which. So maybe I'll just keep you posted.
Yeah, do what you have to do, and then we'll be hanging around watching and waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't do anything unless we know that we have your approval. So
We're not cats.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no, you're sheep. No. Who was I telling this to? Somebody today. It was like, I just don't know how much longer I can go at it like that, like I've been doing. There's got to be a different approach, because I know that all this works. I know, because I've been doing it myself my whole life, but I've also been teaching it in one way or another for 45 years. And so, and then look at you guys. So I'm like, well, obviously it works. So it's clearly not the thing, but it might be the way I'm going about it, or it might be the audience I'm trying to play to. So that's why I'm kind of excited and who knows what'll happen with this thing with Patty. I don't know, but I'm just trying it out to see what it's like. Because it always sounded like fun to me to do it. Where's my chance? We'll see.
I drop out. My battery's dying.
All right. Well, we're done. I'm going to stop the recording here. Because this is about an hour, which is perfect. And so thanks everybody for watching. I hope that was as fun for you as it was for us. And we'll see you next time.